Hello boys and girls, I hope you're all doing well. In today's activity, we are going to be doing an art project where we are going to learn about and practice our lines, patterns, think about rhythm. Those are all principles and elements of design. We're going to do that by doing an underwater, under the sea picture. Here is my example. So I'll walk you through how to create, a one-of-a-kind sea habitat with lots of fish or other animals you may choose to draw. Lots of water lines, maybe, think about their habitat, what other plants are under the water. I would highly encourage you to pause this video here and go ahead and watch the video that I have next to it, the optional video I have next to it. It's a read aloud of a book called How to Hide an Octopus by Ruth Heller. So it's just another lady that's reading that book and she shows you the pictures. And I think it's a wonderful book to read and look at the illustrations before doing this project. So I would encourage you to watch that and then come back here. We're going to do a line warm-up and then we're going to go ahead and start the under the sea drawing. Materials that you can use are crayons are great. Markers are great, and if you have it, watercolor is fantastic, and I'll show you a few options of how you can use a combination of all of those. So you can kind of use what you have, and I should be able to show you all of the options, and you should be able to do at least part of it. All right, so as promised, we're gonna start off by loosening up our hand and we're gonna do a little line warm up, especially important for this one as we're gonna use a lot of lines in our project. So just get your hand moving, make some lines across your page. For me, you can use pencil, you can use marker, you can use crayon. I'm using a marker here. What kind of line would you call that? Very free form, squiggly. Try to do a bunch of different lines. Switch to a different marker now. These kind of look like water lines to me. These are more like waves at the beach. How does each line kind of make you feel? These lines here make me feel a lot more calmer. When my lines get really tight, kind of scribbly, that's kind of like stressful for me. But you know what, maybe it actually is releasing my stress, getting some of my stress out. So have fun, do a bunch of lines, and try to put names, try to put words to your lines. That's a good exercise as well. Draw some and then, you can even try to label them. So for example, we have a thick line here, wavy line, flowy line, spiral line. I called that a messy line. A thin line here. You could call this, kind of starts at a zigzag and then it gets more like, more like little humps or bumps. Starts at a zigzag. You don't need to do this part, but I just wanted to give you guys some adjectives for helping you describe lines. So go ahead and do your line warm up. Now, let's start our under the sea. So as I mentioned, you can do this with a couple different things. Now, if you only have markers, just do everything I tell you with markers. If you only have crayons, just do everything from here on out with crayons. Now, if you happen to have watercolor, you can do everything with watercolor, or you can do a combo. You could do crayons and watercolor, or you could do, if you have a permanent marker or a pen, you could just do like a normal black pen and watercolor. The reason I wouldn't do, washable marker and watercolor is that when you paint over your markers with watercolor, these colors will kind of bleed. So I wouldn't recommend this for your outline colors. All right, let's get started. I'm going to show you a combination of both. So, if you're just getting started, if you have watercolor, let's try watercolor for the water lines. Here, I did the water lines first with black permanent marker, and then I went over them with watercolor, blue watercolor. You can kind of switch it up. Let's try it just with watercolor first. We can lay down our background just in watercolor. That's not a bad idea. So what kind of lines, what kind of sea environment do you want to do? Is it going to be a calm day at sea? Is it going to be a stormy day at sea? What do you want to do? Make your lines match how you want the water to be. The more water you add on your brush, the lighter your color will be, the easier it will be to spread. So I could also just kind of cover a bunch of surface area with blue as well. You can feel free to color everything with blue watercolor if you have watercolor and if you want to, but I think I've gotten the idea across that we're under the water by this amount of wavy lines and blue. I think no one would think that this is above water. I think we know that it's under the sea. So now I'm gonna kind of put my watercolors aside for a moment. You may do so as well, or if you never had them. So I'm gonna get out my crayons. I'm gonna start drawing some fish with crayons. Now the cool thing about watercolor in crayons is that there's wax in crayons. That's one of the materials, the ingredients that makes a crayon. And wax repels or resists water. Water and wax will never mix. So they're really interesting to use together because the watercolor will kind of just go around whatever lines you draw with crayon. It's called a watercolor and crayon or watercolor and wax resist. Okay, so let's try out a fish. I'm gonna pick this nice kind of maroon burgundy color for this fish. Oops, gosh, these are kind of not this crayon. They're a little bit brittle. I'm gonna do this shape. What would you call this shape? I would call this an almond shape. Now you got to decide which way is this fish going. Is this going to be his tail or is this going to be his tail? I'm going to put his tail over here. Now you could make it a triangle tail, or you could kind of curve that, make it a more curved line. If it was a straight line, it would be a triangle. If it's a curved one, it's not quite. I would say it's triangle-ish though. Now you can maybe make him have fins down here, fins at the top. I'm using my imagination for this fish. I'm not really trying to make it exactly like a fish that I've necessarily seen before. Change your colors. What kind of lines are these? What would you call these lines? Now, I told you we were going to learn about and practice patterns, making patterns. A pattern is something that repeats. So would you say that this is a pattern? These are these kind of bumpy lines that repeat. I would call that a pattern. Gotta get my fish's eye. And his mouth. Let's do another one. This pattern that I'm making on this guy has its own name. Do you guys know the name of this type of pattern? If you said stripes, you are correct. Stripes are a type of pattern. Let's see. I kind of want to make a I think these are called blowfish. They're much more rounder. Their bodies are much more circular than almond shape. And I think they puff up when they're trying to scare away a predator. You can make your So you know what, in hindsight, I'm thinking hindsight means thinking about something after it happens. I'm thinking I shouldn't have made so much of a blue background because it's a bit harder to see my fish with crayon, but that's okay. I did the other way for the demo. When I did my example that you saw earlier, that one was I did my fish first and then I did the background. So maybe that's a better idea. Okay, let's do a few with markers. This is my permanent marker. We're gonna again start with this almond shape. Oops. These lines in this tail, I think, are really helping to create a lot of movement. Of course, nothing is actually moving here. We're just drawing on paper, but it's the idea of movement, the illusion of movement, and that's what we do when we make art pieces. It's the idea or the feeling of it, because of course the art piece is usually not moving. Unless it's a sculpture that does move. You know what I'm also noticing? My paper is still a little bit wet, so it would be, see, my marker kind of caught there, and let's see. It's probably bleeding through my paper, I would guess, a little bit. You can see. So if you're feeling like that, I'm not gonna stop because I'm filming a video right now, but you at home, I would really recommend just giving your paper a little while to dry. Pausing, go to the bathroom. It'll only take a few minutes. I'm gonna push through. Ooh, I'll teach you something called layering. So you can kind of create the illusion that there's depth in your painting, meaning that some things are further behind, some things are more forward. So one trick to do that is what's called layering. So you have some things that are overlapping, so you kind of draw behind it and you stop where whatever is furthest in front happens. So that's what I'm doing here. Going along as if this fish is behind this fish. How would you describe these lines here? What word would you use? Okay, so now what you can do is add color onto the fish. If you just have crayons, you just leave it like this. You do everything that we did with crayons. If you just have marker, you do everything that we did with marker. Now, if you have watercolor, what you can do is you can color inside. You can color over the permanent marker. It will not bleed. It will also show through because you used black. You can also color over the crayon because the wax in the crayon will resist. So go ahead and watch. Still be able to see your lines, your crayon lines through. There's one. What color do I want to make? Mr. Blowfish or pufferfish, something like that. I think that's what it's called. Look, especially with these thick lines, look, you can see the water not sinking into the paper because the wax is there. Let's make this one a purple fish. I chose purple actually intentionally because there was a lot of blue behind it and I needed something that would kind of, a color that would be strong enough to go over it. This guy, I need an orange fish. Let's do an orange one. It's making a little bit of a muddy color when it goes over the blue, but you know, hey, whatever. I'm cool with it. All right, so there you have it. You could also, you know, go on top with some more wavy lines to create movement and in your piece, like the water is actually moving because it is in real life. You could add maybe some coral or some kelp, some plants that you find under the sea. What about some splashes of water that come up? Maybe there's some waves. All right. This is my under the sea drawing. I'm so excited to see yours. Play with whatever materials you have, and I hope you enjoy.